Today we're going to talk about liking, loving, and connecting. Have you found somebody to do sunset heart hands with? If you haven't, why? What's wrong? You okay? Let's talk about it. Let's not. Let's talk about the science part. So, one thing that we should talk about as social psychologists or people studying social psychology is what is love? Why are we attracted to other people? Why do we choose some people over another? Friendships and romantic relationships and even familial relationships form so much of our lives socially, psychologically, biologically, right? So, really understanding what goes into our selection of other people is helpful because if we're selecting other people and we know that social situations affect our behavior, then we can understand why we select things and how that in turn affects our behavior in the future. So there are a few factors that influence whom we love, whether we're talking about platonic love or romantic love. So we have proximity, similarity, competence, attractiveness, being liked by that person, and the paradox of choice. One thing that happens every semester that I'm always boggled by, well, not really boggled by it, but because I understand why people do it. But if I'm teaching a class where there's a group project, I always do an introduction session where I allow people to say something fun about themselves so that you can get an idea of who else is in the classroom, right? And every semester I do this in the hopes that people who are similar will be attracted to one another, right? All my anime nerds will be in one group and all my sports jocks will be in another group and all my really cool culinary kids will be in like another group, right? I'm assuming that similarity will be the big thing. But year after year, I'm always reminded that people choose based off of proximity. When you walk into a classroom and you sit by those people who essentially are random people, just by being closer to them, you prefer them to other people. People who are closer to us, not just emotionally, but physically, we have more of a attraction to, right? So I have a lot of neighbors on my block, but the people who I see because they are on my floor, right? And I pass by them more, they're closer to me. That creates more exposure, so it makes me more likely to like them, right? A lot of us might have friends who live several cities away, or might be out of state, or might not even be in the country, because the modern day has allowed us to meet people who aren't close to us. And it makes it a lot easier to stay in contact with people who moved very far away. If you ask your grandparents how they met, they probably lived in the same city, maybe on the same block, maybe even in the same building. Hopefully, that same building wasn't a family house, but also no judgment here. But in general, we like people the closer they are to us. Then, of course, there's similarity. We like people who are similar to us, right? Let's say you are in a crowd, you don't know anybody, and you see somebody wearing the shirt of your favorite band. You think that person is the coolest person in the world. You might go up to them and talk to them. You might strike it off. You might think that this person is great, right? You might become that person's friend based off of that similarity. Now, you could have walked up to anybody in that room and hit it off and had a great conversation, but you assume that that person is more likable because you're similar. It's very egocentric, right? if people like the same things that I like, then they must be good people. And people don't like the things that I like, they must be bad people. But that's how our brains work. We're creating an in group, right? And we're trying to figure out who belongs in that in group and who is outside of that group. So if you like the same music that I do, if you've seen the same shows that I've gone to see, or TV shows that I enjoy watching, if we have similar activities, then of course I'm going to like you more. Now, you can probably think of friends and family members that you really like who you don't have a lot of interest in common with. And that just shows that this is just like any other heuristic, right? It's a shortcut that allows us to know that we might have something in common with a person that might lead to a strong relationship, but similarity doesn't always breed a solid relationship. We tend to like people who are good at things, right? If you have a friend who's a concert violinist, and every time you're hanging out with them, they play some really beautiful songs, you're gonna go, this person's pretty cool, right? If that person is just learning violin and every time you visit them you have to hear that weird terrible like shrieking sound of like somebody who's not good at violin, right, you might not like them as much. Our assessment of people's worth is based off of how good they are at things, right? You can look at this with presidential ratings, right? If I think the president is doing a good job, I'm going to like them. If I think the president is doing a bad job, I'm not going to like them. Now, this is one of those weird, like, which came first correlation does not equal causation, because the less we like somebody, the less competent we're going to view them. But if we assess somebody as competent, if they do something that's impressive to us, right? Our favorite actor, we like the way that they do movies and TV. Our favorite person on Twitter, right? We love their tweets. Because there's something about them that draws us in, right? So if somebody's good at something, we're more likely to like them. Now, if there's a feeling of competitiveness, then that could change things, right? If I have a friend who, every time we hang out, always gets somebody's number, and I never get somebody's number, then I might go, I might go, maybe I should try Instagram handles, because who calls people anymore? Do people even text? So you go to bars and you just get people's TikToks and then you make a dance video with them, and I think that's dating now. So if my friend is super competent when it comes to dating and flirting, and I'm not, and I feel jealous, then that could lead to some animosity. But in general, right, all of these are general rules. The more competent we assume somebody to be, the more we're likely to like them. And then obviously, attractiveness. We like attractive people. It is a very primal thing. Babies show a preference for attractive faces. We like people who look good. Now, our definition of attractiveness is going to change, right? Some of us are attracted to different types of faces and body types, etc. But if we perceive somebody as attractive, we're going to like them more. We're going to be more forgiving of their behavior, right? Unfortunately, people who are attractive have an easier life in some regards, because they are, in general, they're rewarded more, and they're punished less, because just by default, you see somebody who's attractive and you go, I want to give this person all of the things, right? So a like if somebody were smelly and poorly dressed, and like had a lot of smuts on their face, right? Like saliva stains, and they came up to you and asked for directions, or they're like, my cell phone just died, I need to call home, you'd be like, no. Maybe you would because you're a good person, but I'm very judgmental, right? But if like whoever that person is who you follow on Instagram, and you like all of their posts, by the way, stop it. You did like 10 in a row. I'm judging you. I told you I'm very judgy, right? But if that person was like, and you've never met this person, that person was like, oh, I'm so sorry. I don't know why they like have like a slight British affectation. Oh, I'm so sorry. Now it's just a terrible. I lost the accent. It's bad now. Oh, I'm so sorry. I lost my phone. Could I borrow yours? Right, a complete attractive stranger. I'm sorry for all my British students who I've offended. I'm very sorry that I offended you. So I feel so guilty. I'm judging myself because I'm very judgmental. But if that very attractive person, right, a very attractive stranger, were to ask us for a favor, just because they're attractive, we're likely to like them. We're likely to want to do things for them. This is going to surprise nobody, but we like people who like us. It's so dumb, but when people like us, we assume that they're good people, right? If somebody comes up to you and says, "Oh my God, I love your aura," right? You're just so like you shine. You're like a star. Like there's something just amazing about you, right? You go, I don't know who this person is, but they have amazing taste, right? So when people like us, we like them, right? When people compliment us, when people focus on the positive about us, we like them more, which makes us, very easy to manipulate, right? If somebody gives us enough compliments, we're going to be like, this person is trustworthy, right? The more somebody shows that they like us, the more, and I'm sure there's like a certain point where there are diminishing returns where, like, at a certain point, like, okay, this person's too complimentary, right? But in general, the more somebody likes us, the more we like them. Currently, as of recording, there are 7.594 billion people on Earth. Now, eliminate people who are currently in a relationship and not looking, eliminate people who you wouldn't be attracted to based off of your sexual orientation, eliminate people who, you have an Xbox and they have a PlayStation, and you're just like, well, can't date those people, right? So let's just say if you narrow it down to a reasonable dating pool, you have 500 million people to choose from. They could be in Idaho, they could be in Ecuador, they can be right next door, right? Now, you have friends, you have loved ones, you might have a romantic partner. How do you know that you're spending your time with the right people, right? You meet somebody out in the world and you go, this person's cool. They want to hang out on Tuesday, but also my friend is having their birthday on Tuesday. Do I invest my time in a new relationship, or do I invest my time in a relationship that already exists? It's difficult because since we're so connected, we always know what we don't have, right? Or there's the illusion of what we could have. So you see an attractive person on Instagram or at the mall or on a dating site, right? You swipe through 50 people before you get a match. But even though you got a match and this person's really cool, you're chatting with, you're still thinking about number 34 who's smoking hot, right? When we have multiple choices, we feel less secure in the choice that we have. That is the paradox of choice, right? You would think that all of these things that allow us to connect with more people would make us happier, but they make us more miserable, right? If you grow up in a small town and you only have one person who is of the right demographic for you to marry, and you marry that person, you're going to feel like you made the right choice. If there were two people and one was better and the other was slightly worse, you're going to feel like you made the right choice, right? Now, if you've dated 10 people in your life and this is the person you choose to get married to, but you see all your other friends in their relationships, and one of the people who you dated, a few years ago is now married, and they've actually seemed to have gotten their life together since you were dating them, and you're watching a reality show and you're seeing these dream weddings and these dream relationships, then somebody just followed you on TikTok and you follow their profile, because who doesn't follow for follow, right? We're not monsters. And it actually seemed pretty cool, right? Every one of these people is a choice that you could make. Now, will it pan out? You don't know. And that's also the hard thing, because what we perceive isn't necessarily what the reality is, right? So I see some attractive person outside and I'm like, oh man, if I got their number, like the relationship would be perfect. We have nothing in common. I don't know this person. I'm literally just judging them based off of their appearance, right? But I'm home with my wife and kids and I go, well, I don't know, maybe things would be better, right? That constant exposure to other choices makes us miserable. If you were wondering why there are pictures of soda, I think this is the best illustration of paradox of choice, because every time I go to one of these soda machines, I go, well, I know which ones I like, and I know which flavors I could like, and there are some things that I've never even seen before. Like, what is Vault? Is it good? Should I try it? Which one would I try? Right? And so every time I pick my soda and I'm drinking my soda, I think, should I have gotten something else? And then they have the like special limited edition blends sometimes, and then you're like, oh well, I have to try this, because if I don't try it now, I'll never get a chance to try it, right? And then you try it and it's good, but it's not good as what you had before, and you're like, well, I'm glad that I tried it, but I also wish that I had more time with the one that I really like. And you've only got so much stomach, right? And if you try like five that you don't like, it might ruin your appetite. So, what is the right thing to choose? And honestly, the answer is choose something and just stick with it, right? If it works well enough, then it's the right decision. Now, if you pick a soda and it makes you super sick, or like you take a sip of it and like you want to hurl, then switch sodas, right? You shouldn't be in a relationship with a soda that is hurting you. But if sometimes you're like, I got a sugar headache because I drank it too fast, or, sometimes the soda snores, or sometimes you just don't agree on like what you both want, but you're able to talk about it in a respectful way, then you're still with a good soda. This wasn't about soda. It was about relationships. Aha. Not sure if you've ever gone to buy a car, but when you go to buy a car and you're in that dealership, they'll offer you water or maybe a cookie fresh baked that day. Mmm, delicious, right? Why? Why do they offer you water or coffee or cookies or a soda? Because they want you to buy a car. Now, I know what you're thinking, right? A car is a lot of money. A cookie is not a lot of money. Why would somebody giving me a cookie make me buy a car? Because of reciprocity. when people do stuff for us, we feel the need to do stuff for them, right? So any small favor that is done for us makes us like that person more, right? So, or even if it's just praise, sometimes they'll go, "Oh, those shoes that you're wearing, where did you get? Those are fantastic, right?" Or, "Oh my God, I've had such a stressful day. You seem like such a cool person. I appreciate how patient you've been," right? We're like, "Oh, I am a cool person," right? So little bits of praise and favors, they make that person more likable because we like people who do nice things for us, if it's verbal or it's some physical gift, right? Or there's that thing in car sales where it's like, my boss is gonna hate me for this, but let me see if I can talk him down, right? It's like, oh my God, this guy is talking to his boss for me. He is putting his head on the chopping block for me, right? I feel so honored that this person would go out of his way to do something nice for, oh, this is a great person. I have to buy this car now. This guy talked to his boss for me, right? So and then as they're leaving, it's like, okay, I'm gonna go talk to my boss. By the way, that belt is like really stellar. That's You have impeccable fashion taste. Would you like another cookie? Right? That's how they get you. So this explains so many terrible relationships. Who is more attractive? The person who's been nice to you all the time, or the person who is mean and terrible to you and now suddenly nice to you? I'll give you a second to think about that. That second is done. The person who was mean to you and is now nice to you is more attractive. The gain loss theory of attractiveness basically states that for some reason, when we have to work for a person's when we have to work for a person's affection, right? It feels more genuine. It feels more important. We're more attracted to that person as opposed to somebody who like just cared about us the entire time, right? So we continue committing to these relationships partially because we are working for it, right? So we're like, oh man, like this feels so good because once you get that love back, right? Like, oh, I like this person so much. And if you remember when we talked about the sunk cost fallacy and escalation of commitment, this all rolls in together, right? We continue because we're like, well, we have to continue. We've invested so much time. Remember that one time they were mean to me? I don't want that to be have been wasted time. I'm a smart person. I make smart decisions, so I'm going to continue committing to this, right? And then when you get them back on your side, oh, it feels so good. Oh, I like this person so much. If it's a person who's always been caring and considerate, then it's not interesting. It's not as fun. You're not going to like that person as much because there was nothing to work for. Humanity is fun sometimes. So when we're looking at relationships, we should talk about communal versus exchange relationships. Now, some relationships are really concerned with reciprocity. It's basically like two people who are accountants who are dating. So it's like, okay, well, last week you bought lunch and that was 26.73 for the both of us. But I paid the electric bill, and so that's this amount. And I remember that you bought some donuts, so let's see, everything, and then, oh, actually, you gave me a back rub. So let's value out your time and wear and tear on your body, right? So every part of the relationship has to be concerned with reciprocity. Everything has to be balanced out, right? I bought lunch this time, you buy lunch this time, but this lunch was more expensive, so you also have to buy another like snacky thing another time, right? That's an exchange relationship. Now, communal relationship, neither partner is really keeping score. They just do things when things are needed, right? Hey, I feel like grabbing lunch this time. Hey, I'll get lunch the other time. Now, as you might assume, communal relationships tend to be healthier because it's sometimes hard to keep score constantly, right? If you're always keeping score, you're going to feel like you're being screwed over, right? Because the other person's taking advantage of you. It's like, oh, well, I bought lunch twice in a row. When are they going to pay for lunch, right? Now, in a communal relationship, it doesn't mean that there's not equity. So it's just that the everybody knows their role and they figured out that balance in the relationship and they feel like the relationship is balanced, right? So the important thing with these is that like perception. You can actually be in an exchange relationship that's very healthy if both people feel like they're getting what they put into the relationship. You know, when you fall in love, right? Oh, falling in love. Ah, it's so good. Oh, you meet a person, they're perfect. They never poop. They smell good all the time, right? And you never fight. Oh, this relationship's different because you never fight. And you'll never ever fight, right? Because this relationship's just so perfect and they can't do anything wrong, right? That's passionate love, and I'm not sure if you knew this, but it does not last forever, right? We can see passionate love right here, going up, 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 and oh boy, it just feels so good. Now, there are two danger points in a relationship. One, when we start to have that decrease in passionate love, right? So you have this feeling of, oh, it doesn't feel as good, right? Where's that high that I used to get? We also have this point right here, which is another danger point because it's a very low dip, right? You are like, oh, well, it doesn't feel good at all. Like this person's human, right? They do poop sometimes, and sometimes they smell bad, and they posted something that I really disagree with, right? So their relationship with their parents is unhealthy, and they have all these bad habits that were very cute at a time, but now are very annoying, right? Now, what's building up over time is companionate love, that feeling of, wow, I really like this person and this person is my friend, right? Now, not all relationships build companionate love, but what ends up happening is even though passionate love will decrease over time, right? You're not going to continue finding them super sexy and super perfect. You'll just see them as a little sexy and a little perfect, right? But that companionate love increases and balances it out, right? So a lot of people, when they are getting married to somebody, they say, it feels like I'm marrying my best friend. And the reason why they say that is because they've been together long enough to have that nice balance between, I find this person very sexy and I like kissing them, and also I trust this person. I enjoy spending time with this person. They're more than just like a body that I kiss sometimes. And that balance is key to a long lasting relationship. So Robert Sternberg developed the triarchic theory of love, which balances between three different pillars, right? We have intimacy, which is that feeling of closeness, seems like a friend or family member who you like a lot, right? And then we have passion, which is the rose in your mouth, dancing salsa to some amazing music. Then we have commitment, which is like we're stuck with each other, right? Now, all love can either have one of these, two of these, or all three. Now, the person who you are married to should have all three, right? This is what's called consummate love. If you are married to somebody, you want to be committed to them, That's the marriage part. You want to like them, right? You want to feel like you married your best friend, and you want to have some degree of passion, right? You want to look over in the morning, and sometimes you want to go, oh, I I find this person attractive, right? So most times out of not, you want to find that person attractive. Not all the time, not all the time, but at least like 70% of the time. Now, that's all three. That's consummate love, right? Now, you could have just two. So if you just have intimacy and commitment, where you really like somebody and you're stuck with them for a while, that's companionate love. So this could be a long-term best friend, or sometimes there are couples who grow old together and they're not really like sexy and flirty and kissy with one another, but they're just like cute and old and they like each other a bunch, right? They're partners. So the if you have like grandparents who like you've never seen kiss, that would be companionate love. There's also fatuous love, which is passion and commitment. This is the we met each other 2 hours ago in Vegas and we're madly in love and we're gonna get we're gonna get married, right? It's infatuation taken to the extreme. It's commitment and passion with no intimacy. You can also have intimacy and passion, and that's romantic love, right? This is the start of a relationship. You really, or maybe not just the start, but kind of when you are still like in it. So after like that 3 month kind of dip, right? You feel something for them, right? You're very attracted to them. You're like, 5 months later, I still want to kiss your mouth, right? But you also are like, oh, this person's my friend. So that's romantic love, intimacy and passion. Now, if you just have intimacy, then that would be liking, right? So I have friends and I like them. I'm not trying to kiss them. I'm not committed to them. I can end that friendship at any time with a click of a button, just a little block on Facebook, and they're out of my life, right? Or you can have infatuation, which is passion by itself, and that would be the beginning of a romantic relationship. Or, sometimes what happens is you're friends with somebody for a while, and then you're like, oh, I really enjoy this person, right? There's intimacy, but then passion develops, and then you have some romantic love. And then if you get commitment in there, right, you put a ring on it, then you have consummate love. So these can shift around, right? And then finally, you can have what's called empty love, where you're committed, but there's no liking and there's no infatuation, and this is called empty love, or you might see this in what's called a loveless marriage, right? There's still the commitment part, but there's no sexual attraction, nor is there that intimacy that really feeds a relationship. So John Gottman was a researcher, still is actually. Actually, let me check. Yes, he's still a researcher. Sometimes people, pass it, and you don't know. You'll be talking about a celebrity. It's like, why haven't they made a movie, right? So John Gottman, still alive, and he studied divorce and relationships for basically his entire career. And one thing that I think is very helpful to understand about relationships are these things called the four horsemen, right? These are things that, when present in a relationship, kind of make the relationship impossible to develop and grow, right? They stop a relationship in its place, and they're warning signs that the relationship is going to not survive. He used these four horsemen to predict whether or not a couple was likely to divorce. He could basically watch couples for a few minutes, just have a conversation and interact with each other. And by seeing these four things, he was able to determine whether the relationship would last. So, very important to know if these things exist in a relationship, so that you can be aware of it and go, oh, maybe this relationship isn't healthy, right? But also, if you want to fix it and you want to do the work, then we have this right side over here, which are the solutions, right? So one of the four horsemen is criticism. So verbally attacking somebody's personality or character. So the uh, oh, why do you do things like that, right? You always do this, you blah 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 blah, right? So criticism isn't healthy for a relationship. Now, what you can do is you can use I statements. So sometimes I feel really like abandoned when you go out with your friends without telling me, because sometimes I just assume that you were planning on spending the night at home because you didn't tell me that you had plans until halfway in the middle of our movie, right? So, like that type of statement versus like, you always abandon me, you always put your friends before me, right? That is how a relationship can be more healthy. There's also contempt, right? Insulting and being abusive. You're so stupid, you're unmotivated, that kind of thing, right? If I said that and that triggered you, right? You know what that feels like in a relationship. And that's not what a healthy relationship should look like, right? So it's okay to talk about things that your partner does that hurts you, but you should also show appreciation, right? So the like the classic thing is like they try to cook something and it's terrible, right? You don't want to go, why would you cook this crap for me, right? The Because that's contempt, right? You want to say like, oh, this person worked hard to do something that I would like, right? So being able to be appreciative, and then also later at another time to say, hey, just so you know, the food was a little salty, right? Or like, my chicken was severely undercooked. You don't make chicken rare. So please rush me to a hospital immediately because I'm salmonella out, right? But I appreciate you trying. There's also defensiveness, right? So that inability to take blame. And I'm sure that some of you know this person. I'm not this person. You're that. Oh, I'm never defensive. How dare you, right? Uh, if a person can't ever take fault for the things that they do, it's impossible to work with them. Uh, the It's so, like, if you look at like leadership positions, one of the most important thing for a leader is to be able for that leader to admit that they are wrong, right? Because it like everything falls apart if you can't say, I messed up, right? I'm very sorry. How can we move on from this? And defensive defensiveness sometimes just comes from like not wanting to feel like you hurt somebody that you care about. But as mature adults, we go, okay, I made a big oopsie. I hurt your feelings. You're going to be mad at me, and this sucks. But I want you to know that I'm hearing that I hurt you, and now what we can do is work through this, right? So we're taking responsibility for the things that we've done or said. Finally, we have stonewalling, which Gottman argues is the worst, which is basically shutting yourself down and withdrawing so that you don't have to deal with the negative parts of the relationship, right? So they're like, hey, this thing that you do, sometimes I feel like, and then you just like don't respond, or somebody like sends you a text and they're like, hey, last night was kind of rough, I'd like to talk about it, and you don't respond, right? If the person can't respond, and is unwilling to respond, it's very hard to go anywhere with that. So sometimes what happens is people just get overwhelmed by those negative emotions, and instead of dealing with them in a healthy manner, they just shut down. So learning how to take care of yourself, right? Learning how to go, sometimes it's okay to go, hey, like, uh, I, this is like super upsetting for me right now. I feel terrible. Would it be okay if like I took a second to just kind of like, relax? I need to clear my head a little bit and then we can talk about it, right? And then the other partner should be able to respect that and not criticize and be contemptuous, right? So being able to know, okay, well, I want to run away, but like I can communicate that like this is we will talk about this, but like this isn't the best time for me to talk about this. Being able to be open, right? uh all these things can be turned into healthy behaviors. So, as a little parting gift, I want to give you guys the keys to happy relationships. These are well guarded secrets. Once you learn them, I unfortunately do have to kill you. So, that's just how these things work. So, you could just pause the video now and then not know the secrets, but then you, I know you're gonna listen. Just kidding. I'm not gonna kill you because that's illegal, apparently. And also, I like you because you said something nice to me once, and now I like you. The so the first is intimacy. Uh, Being able to be open and honest with people is super important. So the closer you're able to feel with somebody, the better your relationship is going to be, right? Some of us have a very hard time with intimacy, right? We do things purposely to make it so that we don't have to be intimate and close with people. But if you want to have a successful relationship, you have to be close. Now, a lot of us do this because we're afraid of getting hurt, but that's the unfortunate trade off with things like this, right? The more valuable it is, the more likely you are to get hurt by losing it, right? So, if you have a 1997 Toyota Corolla and it gets a scratch on it, you'll go, that's okay, right? I love my car, but that's okay. If you have a brand new 2020 BMW 7 Series, right? Mwah, and it gets a scratch on it, it's going to break you. Unless you're like one of those people like, nah, who cares? Now, the reason for that is because there's more investment and worth in that, right? The You go to take your Toyota Corolla in to get a paint job, and they're like, "Yeah, this paint job costs more than your car. Your car is totaled, right?" You take that BMW in, and they're like, "Oh yeah, so we're going to need to actually replace the door because once the BMW door is scratched, we consider it trash. So we're just going to replace the entire door. That's going to be $2,000, right?" So you, when the fear of intimacy is the fear of loss, right? But if you want to have a good relationship with somebody, you have to risk that, right? So that's so intimacy is important. Authenticity is important, right? You probably have friends or loved ones where you thought you knew them and then you didn't, right? At a certain point, they just completely 180'd and you're like, who is this person who I'm talking to? When you aren't authentic with somebody, then there's no, like, who are you falling in love with, right? Who are you building something with? If there's no authenticity, there's no trust. And as you might assume, trust, very important for relationships. It's actually written at the top. You didn't see it earlier. It's right there. trust, right? Why you should have looked up. And then finally, communication, right? We are social creatures and we value communication so much, right? It's such a like it's part of the reason why we're able to do all the cool things that humans do, because we have like written languages and like you can learn different versions of them and it's great, right? You can make your written language fancy or regular. That's crazy. And so communication is something that we all do, but some of us are very terrible at it. Some of us are very terrible listeners, right? Some of us just listen so that we can just give advice. Very rarely, and this is tends to be more of a male thing, do we listen to people just for the sake of letting them be heard, right? We're like, oh, I have to fix this. But sometimes it's just powerful to hear somebody say something and go, I'm hearing what you're saying. That sounds really terrible, right? Don't we don't have to go like, well, you gotta, like just say like, yeah, your boss is being a real big jerk, right? And then if they want advice, we can provide that. But like really, truly listening without just waiting to speak is of just so important to relationships, not just romantic ones, friendships, business relationships, right? I've seen so many business calls fall apart because parties just aren't listening to one another. One person's like, "This is what I need," and then the other person's like, "Okay, I'm hearing that, but I'm going to give you something else," right? Listen, really listen, and then communicate, right? Uh, there's this weird myth that if you're dating the right person, they should know exactly what you want, right? So for my birthday, I want just to be taken on a trip to Ojai, and like if they really love me, they'll just know that I love Ojai, and even though I've never mentioned Ojai, but like they'll just do that because that's what I want. And if they really love me, right, that's terrible communication. Expecting people to read your mind does not make a relationship healthy, right? So, what we need to get better at is just communicating. If something that somebody does hurts us, then don't be passive aggressive. Don't, like say, well, they should know better, right? We really need to communicate, and then we balance that out by listening, right? So if we can be intimate and open, if we can be authentic, if we can communicate, those are the basics of a healthy relationship. And as you might assume by the fact that I did not tell you that if you really love somebody, then it should be easy. Relationships are hard. Being human is very hard, existing in this very weird social dynamic where you're in one city and the rules are one way, and then you go to another city and the rules are another way, and then everybody has their own expectations, right? And it's very hard to sort out. But if you have these basics, right, you'll probably do okay. So whatever love you're pursuing, platonic, familial, romantic, some weird mix of the two. Hopefully the two is like platonic and romantic where you're like, ooh, we're friends, but also, we love each other. I wish you the best of luck. This is a really uplifting lecture. I really like that. I'm gonna try to do more of these. Oh, this is the second to last lecture. Oh boy. What's the next thing? Research in social psychology. Okay, we'll try to make research fun and uplifting. Bye guys.